Cold air meets your face the moment the back door opens, before the kettle, before the phone, before a single word has been said to anyone. This is the one slow thing. Stepping outside into the garden before the coffee. Do it tomorrow, and by nightfall you will feel the difference in your body, not as a mood you talked yourself into, but as something lower and quieter that you did not put there on purpose. It is still half dark out there. The grass holds last night's water, and the light has not decided yet whether it will be gray or gold. You stand on the step in whatever you slept in, and for a moment you do nothing at all. 10 quiet minutes that most people sleep straight through, and by the time this ends you will know why the ones who take them almost never go back, and why the whole day seems to land on softer ground because of them. Here is the promise again, plain enough to test. Go outside before you drink anything. Walk the edge of whatever you grow, even if it is 3 pots on a step. Touch 1 leaf. Then come back in and start your day the way you always do. By evening you will notice something you were not looking for. Not a feeling. Something in the body, lower and quieter than a mood. Most mornings do not begin. They ambush. The alarm, the screen already lit, a headline, a message from someone who needs something, the day pouring in through a small glowing rectangle before your feet have touched the floor. You are answering before you are awake. You are behind before you have begun. And the strange part is that this feels normal now. A whole life can be spent starting every single day in a small controlled panic and calling it being busy. There is another way to open a day, and it is older than coffee, older than electricity, older than the word productivity. It asks for no equipment and no belief. It costs 10 minutes. And there is 1 minute inside those 10 that does almost all of the work, though it is not the minute you would guess, and I will not tell you which one yet. Picture the person who steps outside first, not to accomplish anything. The tomatoes will not grow faster because they were looked at. They walk the row anyway. They crouch, they turn a leaf, they notice the bean that was not there yesterday. They are not thinking about the day ahead. For these few minutes the day ahead does not exist. There is only this plant, this light, this cold on the back of the hands. And then they go inside and the day begins, the same day full of the same demands. But something has shifted and it holds, and by nightfall the difference is measurable in a way most people never let themselves find out. You have felt the opposite, a day that never found its feet. You were reacting to it from the first second, and you reacted to it until you fell asleep, and you could not have said what you actually did. The hours went somewhere. That kind of day starts in the first 90 seconds after waking, in the choice between a screen and the sky. So here is what we are going to look at. What those 10 minutes actually do to a body, and why the effect is chemical before it is ever emotional. Why the light matters more than the fresh air. Why doing something slow and useless first makes everything fast and useful afterward. And that single minute, the one that carries the whole thing, the one you would walk right past. The kettle can wait 10 minutes. It has waited for you every morning of your life, and it will wait 10 more. What cannot wait, what you only get once and never get back, is the particular quality of the first light on a given morning, which will never fall exactly this way again. Stand on the step. Let the door close behind you. The coffee is not going anywhere. That is the whole practice. Everything after this is only the reason it works. Look at what actually enters you when you step outside. Not air, light. Even before the sun clears the fence, the sky is already pouring something into your eyes that no lamp in your house can imitate. On a dull morning, the light on your doorstep is still many times brighter than the brightest room you own. Your eyes do not register this because they adjust so fast, but a set of cells at the back of them is counting, and it reports upward to a clock buried deep in the brain. That clock runs everything. When you get sleepy, when you wake, when your body decides to release its energy, and when it decides to store it, and it sets itself by one thing above all others, the light that reaches your eyes in the first hour after waking. Coffee cannot do this. Coffee blocks the chemical that makes you feel tired, which is a trick, a loan taken out against energy you will repay later in the afternoon slump. Morning light does the opposite. It does not borrow. It tells the body, correctly and permanently for that day, that morning has arrived. A rise of cortisol comes with it, and cortisol has a bad name it does not fully deserve. In a slow, steady wave first thing, it is not stress. It is the body standing up. It is the tide coming in on schedule. Here is a number worth holding. The light on an overcast day outdoors is roughly 10 times stronger than a bright indoor room, and on a clear morning it can be 50 times stronger or more. Your body needs that strength to set its clock cleanly. Sit inside by a window and you are giving it a whisper when it is asking for a voice. Step outside and you have spoken plainly. The whole rest of the day organizes itself around that one clear signal. And it works fast. You do not need an hour. The cells at the back of the eye are generous. A few minutes of real morning light, even on a gray day with no sun in sight, is enough to move the needle, which is the whole reason 10 minutes is plenty and not a token. You are not trying to sunbathe. You are trying to be seen by the sky, briefly, early, so the clock inside you can read the time off it. Stand there while you look at the beans and the reading happens on its own. And this is why the garden of all places is the right room for it. You could stand on a bare patch of concrete and get the same light, but you would not stay. Nothing would hold you there. The garden gives your eyes a reason to stay outside long enough for the light to do its work. You went out to look at the roses. The light came in while you were not watching. That is the quiet trick of it. The plants are the excuse. The light is the medicine. Think of someone you know who seems to run on a steady clock, awake without an alarm, tired at a sane hour, not dragging through the afternoon reaching for the third cup. There is a fair chance they spend part of their early morning outside and think nothing of it. They would not call it a health practice. They would say they like to see how the garden did overnight. The body does not care what they call it. It only counts the light. You have proof of the opposite in your own history. The mornings you woke in a dark room, checked a screen in that dark room, and moved from dark room to dark car to dark office. By 10 in the morning, you felt vaguely underwater and you blamed the coffee for being weak. It was not the coffee. Your body never got the message that the day had started. You asked it to perform in a day it did not know had begun. None of this requires you to believe a word of it. That is the mercy of it. The clock in your head is not waiting for your opinion. Give it light early and it rewards you whether or not you understand why. Withhold the light and it will keep you slightly off all day, every day, and let you blame everything except the one thing. So the first minute outside is already working before you have touched a single plant. But the plants are not decoration in this. They are about to ask something of you that the light did not. And what they ask turns out to be the rarest thing you will give all day. Now watch what the opening does to everything that comes after it. A day is not a list of separate hours. It is a slope. However you tip the first 10 minutes, the rest tends to roll in that direction. Tip it toward hurry and the hurry compounds. You wake already reaching, already behind, and that posture, leaning forward, bracing, does not switch off when you leave the house. You carry it into the first email, and the email carries it into the first conversation. And by noon, you are a person who cannot sit through a single cup of tea without picking up the phone. And you have forgotten that the day ever had another shape available to it. Tip it the other way and the opposite compounds just as reliably. 10 minutes where nothing is urgent teaches the nervous system a fact it will use all day. That not everything is an emergency. That it is possible to stand still and for the world to keep turning without you gripping it. You cannot lecture your nervous system into believing this. You can only show it, and the showing has to happen early, before the day has made its case for panic. Think about what those 10 minutes are actually made of. You are outside. Nothing is beeping. No one needs an answer. The only tasks in front of you are so small they barely count as tasks. Notice the bean. Pull the one weed. Feel whether the soil is dry. There is no way to fail at this and no way to fall behind. For 10 minutes you live in a world with no deadline, and the body remembers that world all day like a song it heard at breakfast. Here is the part that sounds too simple to be true. The slowness is not the cost of the practice. The slowness is the practice. You are not wasting 10 minutes you could have spent getting ahead. You are installing a setting. Doing one slow, useless, beautiful thing first tells the whole day that speed is a choice you make, not a state you are trapped in. And a person who feels that speed is a choice makes better choices inside it. They are quicker to the things that matter because they are not drowning in the things that do not. Ask yourself one question and answer it honestly. When was the last time you did something in the morning that had no point, that produced nothing, that no one would ever thank you for, and that you were not slightly ashamed of for being a waste of time? For a great many people, the honest answer is years. Every morning act has to justify itself. Even rest has to be earned. And a life lived entirely inside that rule slowly forgets that it is allowed to simply stand in a garden and look at a plant that will do absolutely nothing for it. There is a person somewhere ahead of you in years who learned this the hard way, who spent decades tipping every morning toward hurry and wondering why the whole day felt like being chased. Then something changed. Illness, or loss, or just exhaustion so complete that the old way finally became impossible. And in the forced slowness, they stumbled onto the door and the light in the 10 minutes, and found that the thing they had been racing past the entire time was standing still in the back garden, waiting. You do not have to wait for the crisis to teach you. That is the whole point of saying this out loud. The lesson is free right now, on any ordinary morning, at the cost of a slightly later first cup. So the light sets the clock, and the slowness sets the tone. Those two things alone would be enough to change a day. But there is a third thing happening out there, something the garden does to your attention that no walk on a treadmill and no minute by a window can copy. And it may be the part that matters most. Kneel down for a moment in your mind next to whatever you grow. A plant cannot be rushed and it cannot be fooled. It does not care how important you are or how full your calendar is. It grows at exactly the speed it grows, and it asks for exactly one thing from you, which is that you notice it. Notice that the leaves have gone pale. Notice the soil pulling away from the edge of the pot. Notice the first curl of something wrong on the underside of a leaf, days before it becomes a problem you cannot fix. To grow anything at all is to practice paying attention to something outside yourself, on its schedule, not yours. That is rarer than it sounds. Count the things in an ordinary day that actually hold your full attention with nothing else pulling at the edges. Not many. Most of what you look at while also looking at something else. The screen while eating, the road while planning, the face of a person in front of you while a notification burns a hole in your pocket. Divided attention has become the water you swim in, so total that you forget attention was ever meant to rest fully on one thing. The plant will not accept divided attention, or rather it will, but you will miss everything. The whole reward of standing over it is in the small changes, and the small changes are invisible to a distracted glance. You have to actually see it, and in the few seconds it takes to actually see one plant, something goes quiet in you that almost never gets to go quiet. The narrator in your head, the one running commentary on the day, the worry, the plan, the replay of yesterday pauses. Not because you fought it, because for a moment there was something more interesting than yourself to look at. This is the closest thing to rest the mind ever gets while you are awake, not sleep, not collapse in front of a screen which only feeds the noise. Real rest, where attention settles fully on something that is not a problem to be solved. A plant is not a problem. It is just alive, slowly, in front of you. And to look at it properly is to be handed a few seconds off from the exhausting job of being you. Here is a paradox worth sitting with. The plant gives you nothing. It will not love you back, it will not thank you, and half of what you plant will disappoint you. And yet people who tend growing things describe a kind of peace they cannot find in things that give a great deal more. The peace is not in what you get. It is in the giving of attention itself. It turns out the act of caring for something slow, with no reward promised, is not the price of the peace. It is the peace. And children know this without being told. Watch a small child in a garden and they do not tend it, they disappear into it, crouched over an ant or a stone for as long as it holds them. Time gone, self gone. We call it play and file it away as something you grow out of. But it was never childish. It was the natural state of an attention that had not yet been trained to split itself a dozen ways. The garden offers that state back to you, first thing, no training required. You already know this from the other direction. Think of how you feel after an hour of the opposite, an hour of attention sprayed in 40 directions, skimming, scrolling, half reading, half hearing. You feel scattered because you were scattered. Attention is not free. It is drawn from a well, and a morning that begins by pouring it in one clean direction leaves the well fuller all day than a morning that begins by kicking it over. So the plant asks for your attention, and in taking it, gives you the one form of rest the modern day has almost entirely removed. And it does this first thing, before anything else has laid a claim on you, when your attention is at its freshest and worth the most. None of this is new. None of it was ever new. There were people doing exactly this every morning, long before anyone measured cortisol or wrote a word about attention. They walked their gardens at first light and never once thought of it as anything but the ordinary start to an ordinary day. And what they had, without a name for it, is worth looking at closely, because we did not lose it by accident. There was a version of this that used to be simply what a morning was. Go back 2 generations, maybe 3, to a certain kind of house with a certain kind of garden out the back. Someone in that house rose before the others, not for a workout, not for a meditation app, not for anything with a name. They went out into the garden while the kettle heated, or before it, in a coat pulled over night clothes, and they walked. Down the path, along the beds, past the runner beans and the potato ridge and the row of whatever was in season. They bent to pull a weed. They checked what the slugs had done overnight. They stood at the end and looked back at the whole plot in the early light, and then they went in and the day started. Nobody called it a practice. Nobody would have understood the question. It was just the round. You did the round in the morning the way you put the kettle on, without deciding to, without congratulating yourself for it. And yet inside that unnamed ordinary habit was every single thing we have just described. The light in the eyes at the right hour, the slow, useless opening with no deadline in it, the full attention landing on something alive. They were doing all of it, correctly, every morning, and the only reason they never spoke about its benefits is that they did not experience them as benefits. They experienced them as a normal, steady life. Now feel what is missing from the picture and where it went. The garden shrank, then narrowed into a square of lawn, then into nothing. The morning round had nowhere to happen. The step outside got replaced by the step toward the screen. And here is the cruel part. No one noticed the loss because the round had never been named, and you cannot mourn what you were never able to point at. A generation quietly stopped walking out into the light first thing, and because the habit had no name, its disappearance had no funeral. Here is a small fact that should land harder than it does. The people from those houses, the ones who did the unnamed round, are frequently the ones who stay sharp and steady into old age in a way that surprises everyone around them. We reach for explanations. Good genes, hard work. The food was cleaner then. Maybe. But some of it, more than we admit, is thousands upon thousands of mornings that started outside, in the light, moving slowly, attention resting on something growing. 10 minutes times a whole life. It adds up to a number too large to picture. And it was never only the body that benefited. The round gave the day a hinge, a moment that belonged to no one else, before the demands of the house and the work and the family came knocking, when the person doing it was answerable to nothing but a row of beans. A great many steady lives were quietly held together by that one unclaimed slice of morning, and when it vanished, people did not just lose the light. They lost the one part of the day that had been entirely their own. Ask an older person who still keeps a garden what they do first in the morning and listen to how they answer. They will not give you a health justification. They will say they go out to see how things are coming along, to check on the tomatoes, to see if the frost caught anything. The reason is always the plants, never themselves. And that innocence about it, that total lack of self-improvement in the motive, may be exactly why it works so well and lasts so long. The moment a thing becomes a technique for fixing yourself, it develops a weight, and heavy things get dropped. So the task in front of you is not really to learn something new. It is to recover something that a great many people used to do without thinking, and that only recently fell out of the ordinary shape of a day. You are not inventing a morning practice. You are walking back out to a door that has been standing open the whole time. And when you do step back through it, the first thing that meets you is not your eyes at all. It is your hands, because there is a part of this that the mind arrives at last, long after the body already knows. Reach down and put your fingers in the soil and notice how fast something in you settles. The hands get there first. Before you have thought a single clear thought about your day, your fingers are reading the ground. Is it dry? Is it cold? Is it packed hard from the heat or loose and dark from the rain? This is old knowledge, older than language, running through the skin of your hands straight into a part of you that does not use words. You are gathering information the way every living thing before you gathered it, by touch. And the gathering itself is calming in a way that no amount of reassuring thoughts can match. There is a reason for this that goes deeper than it seems. For almost the entire length of human time, to be well was to have your hands in the world. Digging, tending, mending, carrying. The hands were how you met the day. Only very recently, in a sliver of time so thin it barely registers, did the hands go quiet, hovering over a keyboard, tapping a glass screen, holding nothing that has weight or texture or temperature. And something in the body reads that emptiness as wrong, as a kind of low hunger it cannot name. Put the hands back in the soil and the hunger quiets. People describe it and cannot explain it. The tightness in the chest that was there when they stepped outside is somehow lower after a few minutes of pulling weeds. Nothing was solved. The problems that were waiting are still waiting. But the body has been reminded of an older truth, that it is a physical thing in a physical world, with real ground under it, and that reminder alone loosens something no clever thought could reach. Consider one detail most people never hear. There is a common living thing in ordinary soil, harmless, everywhere, that appears to nudge the brain toward calm when it makes contact with the skin, working on the same pathway that many medicines aim at through far cruder means. You do not need to remember its name or believe the research is settled. You only need to notice that the oldest advice for a heavy heart was almost always some version of go outside and work the ground, and that this advice was given for centuries by people who had measured nothing and were simply reporting what they saw. The soil was medicine long before anyone could say why. You can feel the truth of this in how reluctant the hands are to stop. Start pulling one weed and you will find yourself reaching for the next, and the next, past the point you meant to quit. That is not chores taking over. That is the body recognizing something it was built for and not wanting to let go. The hands remember a job the rest of us forgot we ever had, and given half a chance they slip back into it like a key into a lock worn smooth. Feel the difference between this and the way most calm is now sold to you. The calm you can buy comes through the eyes and ears, a screen, a soothing voice, a paid subscription to peace. It goes in through the head and it never quite reaches the body, which is why it evaporates the moment you look away. The calm from the soil comes the opposite way, up through the hands into the body first, and it stays because the body is where it started. You did not think your way to it. You cannot think your way out of it either. And notice when this is happening. First thing, before the hands have spent the day gripping and typing and scrolling, while they are still soft and empty and ready to hold something real. The first thing you touch on a given day shapes the day more than you would ever guess. Touch a cold screen and you have told your body one story. Touch cold earth and you have told it another, and the body believes whatever it touches first. So the light sets the clock, the slowness sets the tone, the attention rests the mind, and now the hands settle the body, all of it in the same 10 minutes, all of it before the coffee. Which brings us finally to the minute I promised you at the start and kept holding back. The 1 minute inside those 10 that does more than all the rest, and that almost everyone, even those who go outside, manages to skip. Here it is, the minute, and you are going to be surprised by how little happens in it. It is not the minute you touch the soil. It is not the minute you find the first ripe tomato or pull the stubborn weed. All of that is doing, and doing is easy. Doing is comfortable. Doing still lets the mind stay busy managing the task. The minute that carries the whole practice is the one where you stop doing anything at all. You straighten up. You let your hands fall. And you simply stand there in the middle of the garden, looking at nothing in particular, wanting nothing, fixing nothing. For 60 seconds you are a person with no task. That is the minute almost everyone skips, and they skip it because it is the hardest one. It is easy to go outside if you are going outside to do something. Pull the weeds, water the pots, check the beans. The doing gives you permission to be there. But to stand still and do nothing, with no phone, no purpose, no small job to hide inside, is strangely difficult, and the difficulty tells you exactly how badly you need it. A person who cannot stand still for 1 minute in a garden is a person the day owns completely. The minute is where you take a small piece of yourself back. Watch what happens in that minute if you let it come. At first, discomfort. The mind, deprived of a task, throws up its list. Things to do, things you forgot, the itch to reach for the phone just to check. Let it pass, and it does pass, faster than you expect. And then, underneath the noise, something opens. You hear the birds that were there the whole time. You feel the temperature of the air on your face as a fact and not a background. You notice you are breathing, and that no one is asking you for anything, and that the ground is holding you up without any effort on your part. For 1 minute, you are simply a living thing standing among other living things in the morning light. That is all. That is everything. Here is why this minute matters more than all the others. Every other part of the morning is still, in some small way, about accomplishment. Even tending the plants is a task with an outcome. But this minute has no outcome, and that is precisely its power, because it is the one moment in the whole day when you are worth something without doing anything, when your value is not tied to output. Most people go from waking to sleeping without a single such moment, and then they wonder why they feel like machines. A machine that stops producing is worthless. A person standing in a garden doing nothing is still completely a person. That minute is where you remember which one you are. Try a small test tomorrow and watch it prove itself. Do the whole round but skip the minute. Just do your little jobs and go inside. The day will be a bit better because the light did its work. Then the morning after, do everything the same but add the minute of standing still. Notice which evening you arrive at less frayed. Almost everyone who tries this in earnest reports the same thing. The doing helps. The standing still is what actually lands. And do not overcomplicate it. It is 1 minute. You do not need to empty your mind or reach any particular state. You only need to stop and stay stopped long enough for the day to loosen its grip before it has even taken hold. 60 seconds of being no one, going nowhere, wanting nothing. It is the least productive minute of your entire day, and it quietly runs all the rest of it. So that is the whole shape of it now, out in the open. But I told you at the start that the real proof does not arrive in the morning. It arrives much later, when you have long forgotten you were ever outside. It arrives in the evening, and it is the part almost no one connects back to the door. Come forward now, past the whole day, to the hour when it finally lets you go. Evening is where the morning quietly presents its bill, or its gift. Think of the two kinds of evening you already know. There is the evening at the end of the ambush day, where you land on the sofa emptied out and wired at the same time, unable to rest and unable to do anything worth calling rest, the phone back in your hand out of pure habit, the hours behind you a blur you could not honestly account for. And there is the other evening, rarer, where you feel tired in a clean way, where the day has a shape you can look back along, where sitting down feels earned instead of collapsed into. Most people assume the second kind of evening is decided by the evening. It is not. It is decided at the back door, 16 hours earlier. Here is the thread that almost no one traces. When the day begins outside in light and slowness and attention, the nervous system spends the whole day a single notch calmer than it would otherwise have been. Not dramatically, one notch. But that one notch, held across an entire day, changes how everything lands. The difficult conversation still happens, but it does not flood you. The bad news still comes, but it does not knock you over. You meet the same day everyone else meets, but you meet it from slightly steadier ground. And by evening, the difference between steady ground and shifting ground has compounded into two completely different days, though on paper the events were the same. Think of two people walking into the exact same hard afternoon. Same news, same demands, same tired hour. One of them started the day at a screen in a dark room. The other started it outside in the light, standing still for a minute among the plants. By 5 o'clock, they are not in the same day at all. One is being carried by the current. The other is swimming in it, tired but still choosing the strokes. Nothing in their calendars would show the difference. Everything in their bodies would. This is why the promise at the start was about the evening and not the morning. The morning feeling is pleasant but small and easy to dismiss. Anyone can enjoy 10 minutes in a garden. The real evidence is downstream, hours away, in a body that arrives at nightfall with something left in the tank, in a mind that can sit through a whole meal or a whole conversation without reaching for the glowing rectangle to escape itself. That is the return on the 10 minutes, and it is paid out so much later than the deposit that most people never connect the two. There is a specific moment I want you to watch for, on a day that started outside. Somewhere in the late afternoon, in the middle of something ordinary, you will feel a small steadiness underneath you that you did not put there on purpose. A sense that you are inside your day rather than being dragged behind it. You will not remember the morning that caused it. That is the strange grace of this practice. It hides its own tracks. The cause is buried at dawn and the effect surfaces at dusk. and the two so rarely get introduced to each other that people live entire lives feeling the effect and never finding the cause. Notice what this means about all the other things we reach for to fix the evening: the wine to take the edge off, the show to go numb in front of, the scroll that promises rest and delivers the opposite. Every one of them is an attempt at the end of the day to buy back a calm that was available for free at the start of it. You cannot repair at 9 at night what was set wrong at 6 in the morning. You can only sedate it. The evening is not where the day gets fixed. The evening is where the morning gets revealed. So the 10 minutes were never really about the 10 minutes. They were about all the hours you were not thinking about them. That is the last thing standing between most people and this, and it is not laziness and it is not doubt. It is something smaller and more human, waiting right at the door every single morning. Tomorrow morning it will not be the idea that stops you. It will be the door. You will wake, and some part of you will remember all of this and agree with all of it and still not want to go outside. The bed is warm. The morning is cold. The phone is right there and it asks for nothing but a thumb. 10 minutes in a garden sounds lovely in the abstract and slightly ridiculous at 6 in the morning with the light gray and your feet reluctant to find the floor. This is the resistance, and it is worth understanding because it is the only real obstacle. Not disbelief, not lack of time, just the small animal pull back toward comfort and the screen right at the threshold. Here is the honest truth about that resistance. It never fully goes away, and you do not need it to. The people who do this every morning are not people who stopped feeling the pull of the warm bed. They are people who learned that the pull lies. It promises that staying in will feel better, and it is wrong every single time. 10 minutes after you force yourself out into the cold, you are always glad you did, and you can search your whole memory and not find one morning you regretted going outside. The resistance has a perfect record of being wrong, and still it shows up every day, confident as ever. So do not wait to feel like it. That is the mistake that kills every good habit before it starts. You are waiting for a morning when going outside feels easy and appealing, and that morning is not coming, or it comes so rarely you cannot build anything on it. The move is to go before the feeling, to put your feet on the floor and your hand on the door while the part of you that wants to stay in is still making its case, and to let the light win the argument that words never will. Motivation follows action here. It does not lead it. You do not go outside because you feel good. You feel good because you went outside. Make it almost too small to refuse. This is the whole trick of getting past the door. Do not promise yourself a full session of mindful gardening. Promise yourself the step. Just get to the doorstep, just get the door open, just get one lungful of the cold air. 9 mornings out of 10, once you are standing out there, you will stay, because the reasons to stay are real and they are all around you, and the reasons to go back and evaporate the moment your face meets the morning. But even on the 10th morning, when you truly only manage the doorstep and then retreat, you still got the light, and the light was most of it anyway. There is no version of stepping outside that fails. And let go of doing it perfectly every day forever. You will miss mornings. You will sleep through some and rush through others and forget entirely on the days you most needed it. That is not failure. That is just being a person. The practice is not a chain you break the moment you miss a link. It is a door that stays open no matter how long since you last walked through it, and it asks nothing of you except that you come back when you can, with no penalty for the mornings you did not. A thing this gentle cannot be failed. It can only be neglected, and neglect is undone the instant you step outside again. So the whole enormous benefit, the clock and the calm and the steadier evening and the years of it stacked up, comes down each morning to one small ordinary act of will at one ordinary door. Cross it, and everything we have talked about is yours for the day. And it turns out that door has been part of this from the very first word. So come back to where we started, to the back door before the coffee. It is still half dark. The grass still holds last night's water. The light still has not decided whether it will be gray or gold. And you are standing on the step again, in whatever you slept in, with the whole day waiting on the other side of that door and the kettle cold behind you. Nothing about the scene has changed since the first minute of this. What has changed, maybe, is that you now know what is actually happening out here, and how much of your day is quietly decided in these few minutes that look like nothing at all. You know now that the light is setting a clock that will run until you sleep, that the slowness is teaching the whole day that not everything is an emergency, that the plants are pulling your attention into the one clean direction it will hold all day, that the soil under your hands is settling something no thought could reach, that somewhere in here is a single still minute where you are worth something for doing nothing, and that the evening you arrive at, 16 hours from now, is being decided right here, before you have said a word to anyone. And you know it is not new. That someone stood in a garden like this every morning long before you, in a coat over their night clothes, and never once called it anything, and lived steadier and longer than the people who raced past it. The door they walked through is the same door. It has been standing open the whole time, through every hurried, screen-lit morning, waiting without complaint for you to remember it is there. The coffee can wait. It has waited every morning of your life. The one thing that cannot wait, the one thing you only get this once, is the particular light of this particular morning, which is already changing as you stand here and will never fall exactly this way again. 10 minutes, before anything, before anyone, before the day has a chance to tell you who you have to be inside it. You do not have to believe any of it. You only have to open the door. The whole day is decided before the coffee, by whoever is willing to step outside and stand still while it is still dark.